I'm hoping folks can hear me. We got a report that people were having trouble hearing the audio, so I think we'll hopefully get some feedback that indicates that it's working better or not. So I'm going to continue, and the second question we had was about homelessness, and the comment in question is, I'm just curious as to what can be done. If anything can be done, I would like to know. I have a homeless camper in front of my daycare and it's been abandoned. We have not seen the gentleman for five or 6 weeks, but he's left all his stuff, and I was wondering what can be done about it, if anything. So I'm not clear whether that's a vehicle camper or just a tent. Not exactly from the context that it's not clear to me, but that can absolutely start with a non-emergency phone call to the police department. And if you make that call, we have a community services officer who's assigned to helping connect our homeless individuals, get connected with resources that can help them both find permanent housing and or address whatever social or economic or other needs they may have, and we're committed to doing that. At the same time, can help make sure that the livability issues that the situation like this presents, with either a vehicle being abandoned in front of someone's daycare or a encampment, are both things that can be addressed by our community services officer, Brandon Peterson. So that would be what to do there, would be to contact the non-emergency line.
I'm going to rotate you here.
Oh, am I sideways today?
You're sideways.
Or upside down?
Here we go.
We're having some fun technology today. Hopefully,
There we go.
Hopefully I can be seen now, not sideways. All right, let's see. Can I provide an update on the Southwest Corridor? I can. The Southwest Corridor, there continues to be lots of discussion, and I would say that from my perspective, and I'm actually going to say this during a panel next week that I'm serving on, is that I still view the Southwest Corridor as a critical project, and right now the challenge is figuring out how to provide the local match for that. I think the federal government is clearly committed to supporting additional infrastructure and this is a perfect project for that, that's already been planned and is almost entirely through the federal environmental process, which is a big deal. But yet we still need to have a local match, and what that's going to look like is still, I think, a question. But from my perspective, the question on Southwest Corridor is not if, but rather when and how. So that's my update on Southwest Corridor. We got to figure out the local funding. Oh,
You're being turned again.
I'm gonna be twisted again.
There you go.
All right, third time's a charm there. And we have a question: is Tigard requiring masks now? And the answer to that question is, first of all, we don't, other than for our staff, and frankly even that is being, we are directing based on the Oregon Health Authority's guidance and direction. So we're not making individual decisions from a public health perspective. That's not our role as a city. And so we are taking that guidance and working to provide good information to Tigard residents, but our decisions are less really decisions about masks and more I would characterize as us communicating what the Oregon Health Authority has indicated related to masking. So that means right now that if you've been paying attention, things are changing pretty rapidly in that space on mask wearing, outdoors, indoors, vaccination status, etc. So I would encourage you to be reading up on that, and not details I'm going to try to cover tonight, and if I did, they'd probably change by tomorrow. We have a question, when will City Hall be open to the public? I think a number of services are coming back. Well, first of all, I should say, City Hall's been open to the public, just not physically, in many cases. But we are working to reopen services in person actively, and I think we can get, staff can get you a robust answer if you want to provide your contact info in a private message to the city Facebook account. We can make sure that we get a more detailed answer to you about each department and their status. Certainly the library has started some limited services, and I think court is going to be starting or has started recently, and those are the ones I know of off the top of my head. So that would be, but we can get you a more detailed answer. All right, Kent, what other kinds of questions are we getting rolling in
We're
here?
gonna crank up the volume. People want it louder, so we'll do that to begin with here.
Well, that's going to be the audio.
There we go.
They want to hear me louder.
They want to hear you louder.
Yeah, so you
Yes.
gotta, I think we need the device closer to me.
We'll move it up here closer to the mayor.
Maybe I can lean forward too. And shout. All right, what kinds of questions are we getting rolling in, Kent?
All right, let's see what we have here. We have a question about the budget and if there's any changes to, well, actually, more of what are the changes from last year's budget?
The changes from last year's budget is the question. There's actually a summary that we can provide, a written summary, so staff can get a written summary to you. If you want to put your contact info in a private message or a direct message, we'd be happy to do that. And Tom is saying that the volume is better, so shouting at the table is working. And I'm leaning forward. Tom, if I keel over, you'll know why. Okay, let's see. So what other questions do folks have? I think the budget question, I think we can best answer by getting you some detailed information, some highlights. Actually, I can cover some highlights that have changed. We made actually a decision kind of right before the budget cycle, but was impacted by this year's budget, to fund body cameras. And we already had some body cameras and vehicle cameras in the police department, but they were some of them were quite old, or many of them were quite old and needing to be replaced. And one of the budget items includes providing and having a state-of-the-art system that automatically starts videotaping under certain circumstances, provides high resolution video, which some of the cameras and the systems, if you think back 16 or 17 years, that's how old those were. That doesn't seem like a lot, but think about what's happened in camera technology since 2005 or 6. That's how old the cameras in the patrol vehicles were. You mentioned restaurant month. What are my favorite restaurant spots in Tigard? Oh boy, that is that's a dangerous question because I don't want to leave anybody out. But places I frequent are, we'll start with Thirsty Lion, Din Tai Fung. It's barely outside of Tigard city limits, so I'll also include Royal Panda, which is both my and Mayor Bubenek's favorite Chinese restaurant. In fact, we insist that when we meet for lunch, we meet there. So that's barely in Tualatin, but almost in Tigard. Yeah, there are so many restaurants in. I was going to then head towards downtown. I had a staff member telling me about a particular place in downtown, but I got 15 restaurants we got to cover in downtown Tigard. So in downtown Tigard, it is Beach Hut Deli, Bailey's Burgers, Cooper Mountain Ale Works, Thai Delicious is fabulous. Those are all places I frequent, and I'm not going to put it down to one favorite spot. Sorry. And I probably missed some, but that's what I can do quickly. We have other questions that are rolling in. What's the status on the Public Safety Advisory Board? They're continuing to do their work. They're asking a lot of really good questions and working very diligently on moving things forward that and providing really good input to the city leadership team and to the police department leaders. So the status of their work is that they're working hard. We did pass, the council I shouldn't say pass, we approved their work plan about a month and a half ago or so. All right, we have a question. We need Tiger to start enforcing sidewalk laws to keep pedestrians safely
Off
the streets.
Off the streets. Yep.
How can we get a task force on this? We need Tiger to start enforcing sidewalk laws to keep pedestrians safely off the streets. Oh, I see, off the streets,
that's
but
from-
on the sidewalks.
That's from
Okay.
Mick.
Got it.
Mick.
Well, Mick, good to hear from you. Hope you and your family are doing well. I think this is in reference to garbage cans and other things being left on the sidewalks, which block pedestrian connectivity. And I know that we've worked really hard with both Pride Disposal and Waste Management and insist that they, when they leave a trash or recycling bin, that it is not left in the sidewalk. And Mick, that's mostly due to your and a couple other people's feedback. So that can be attributed in part to your feedback. Beyond that, I am not aware of a program that we can afford that is going to be more specific to enforcing sidewalk laws at this point, but I could certainly refer that to the police department and to code enforcement. And so we'll have the staff, I think Mick Stevens is the one who asked about that. So Carol, if you want to put that down as a follow-up for him, I think we have his contact information already. And I would say both code enforcement and police department should get that and provide a more detailed and robust response. Let's see, Lindsay asks, will there be transit service to the new developments on Roy Rogers? That's an excellent question, and one that we've been pushing with TriMet, and I don't think that we've got definitive answers other than right now there is not, I don't think, the right density of transit users for them to consider that viable. But as that space gets built out more, I hope and expect that to change, and we will certainly continue to push TriMet on that point. We actually push them for better service just in Tigard in general too. Washington County and Clackamas County both are not served nearly as well as Multnomah County and by TriMet, and particularly with bus service. And so that's kind of a constant piece of feedback that we provide. All right, do we have other questions rolling in? John asks, will movies in the park return this year? I think I just saw that there's some teen movies in the park that are coming up. So I saw that, and it looked like they're planned in a socially distanced way. I have not heard about kid or like young child or adult movies in the park, but I did see something advertised targeted at teens specifically. So we can certainly get you more information. I actually don't know the answer to that. Do either of the staff that are here know the answer to?
You're right. There's two youth movies.
Two youth movies. Okay. Oh, they're youth. All right.
Youth, strictly for the youth.
Youth movies. I thought they said teen, but maybe I'm wrong. All right. Or maybe I don't. My memory is only so good. And Mick is thanking me. Thank you. Good to hear from you. And I hope to see you guys out at Dirksen Nature Park soon. Mick, or around Tigard. I know you're out walking with your daughter and other family members. All right, do we have some other questions? How much does Tigard?
Yep.
I can't read the writing from
Becky,
5 feet away. But I'm
Becky
trying.
Potts asked, how much does Tigard pay versus the others in regards to bus service?
So first of all, TriMet is funded multiple ways, but one is through basically an employment tax that we all pay on payroll. And that's true of all wages earned in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties, with the very small exception, I think, of the city of Wilsonville, which provides its own service. They may still be taxed the same way, but everybody that is working, so it's done on a work location, not on where you live. And then frankly, TriMet gets a lot of their money from the federal government to provide regional transit service. And so you're paying, or we are all paying kind of indirectly in that way as well. But we all, theoretically, we all are paying, because it's a percentage of payroll, we all are paying similar, but I think it's well understood that Multnomah County benefits more. With that said, a lot of us, or not a lot, but some of us, including my payroll, comes from my full-time job out of Multnomah County, and so that's a complicated thing to really answer, but I hope that is a little bit helpful. All right, Sarah asks if the city's getting funds from the federal government due to COVID, what will it be used for? So Sarah, good question. We originally thought we were going to be getting about $11 million, a little bit more than that. Because of our status as a partial entitlement city, which I won't get into, but just trust me, we're a partial entitlement city. That has to do with how we get community development block grant funding. Our allocation was much lower than we originally were told. So it ended up being about $7.5 million instead of 11. We are using that. First of all, there's not been specific direct decisions made other than some clear direction that we intend to invest in the things that we have identified as our council goals and our strategic initiatives over the next couple of years. So that's one. And that's one area, but that's actually more like 4 or 5 areas that we've designated that were before we knew this money was coming. So we have already diligently planned what we think that we need to deliver on, and those funds will be used to support those activities. And then the other major thing, and the council is very strong on this, is continuing to help businesses and residents who need continued support through COVID, and we're not going to back down from that. So those are at a high level the things that we're doing with, or that we plan to do with money coming from the federal government. Okay, we have a question. Did the recent ballot measure pass, and how will it benefit the Tigard community? Yes, it passed overwhelmingly, 65%. I don't know that it's been certified yet. I'm looking at the city recorder, who's our official elections official, but I anticipate it will be certified soon. And it passed. How it will benefit the Tigard community, in particular in downtown, is going to allow us to continue to invest and make downtown the vibrant, 18 to 20 hour a day exciting environment that draws people that want to both live, work, and play in that area. So that's how it will benefit our community. There's some very specific projects that were outlined in that are examples of the kinds of things that will allow. That was in the materials that you would have received as a voter, and you can also get from the City of Tigard website. I'm very confident of that. All right, Becky asks, what's the status of converting the Tigard Metro Police grounds to partial low-income housing funding? Not sure I worded that right. Oh, Becky, I know what you're talking about. We'll get through this. So the status of that is that we're needing to, as a city, I think we're needing to do more due diligence and finer work, both financially planning and evaluating options as to how exactly we can make that project hopefully happen. The purpose of that overall, it's not just one project, but the whole purpose of that concept is to better utilize the space in downtown Tigard. Again, as a reminder, the city owns 13.5 acres of what I would say is pretty poorly used space. A lot of it is surface parking, public works yard, and then single floor city hall. Takes up a lot of space. Not a good use of 13.5 acres in our downtown. And frankly, we'd like to get some of that space, or much of that space, back on the tax rolls as best we can, and also have it be contributing to our vision for downtown Tigard. And so we're at a space where, I think the council had originally hoped that we might be able to put what we need to put on the ballot, which is not a new tax. It's an extension of an existing bond. And we were hoping to put that on the ballot in November of this year, and we're not at a point where we can confidently go to the voters and provide the level of detail information and the confidence that we as a council need to have to put that on the ballot. So that means that we're doing a lot of work now. The staff in particular are doing a ton of work to identify a public works yard. That's one of the first things we got to do. And that work is happening very rapidly. And you've seen some things in the public about that, but there's more to be done there. There is both the financial plan that has to happen, and we have to get confidence about the sizing and cost of the project. So until those things happen from the city perspective, we can't free up all of our space to be redeveloped for housing and affordable housing. But the hope is that we can figure out how to make that complex puzzle work. Hopefully that helped, Becky. Let's see, how has Tigard adapted to the COVID vaccines? I'm not sure I understand that question exactly, but Tigard, Washington County is doing actually pretty well on, I would say, comparatively on vaccines. We were able to move our, because we got to 65% vaccination, first dose vaccination rates, we were able to move our businesses to lower level of sort of COVID risk, and that's allowed them to a lot more freedom to operate, still doing it safely, but operate more like pre-COVID times. What other questions do we have rolling in? When will Universal Plaza be open to the public? I think it's open now, would be my first answer. That's kind of a smart aleck answer though, because we intend, with the recent passage of our urban renewal, to have Universal Plaza in a couple of years being transformed into a pretty amazing space. And I think that's probably more what this question is focused at. And we're in active design phase right now. I don't know if we have an exact time when we expect it to be open, but I think it would be in the 2 to 4 year range for the next phase of Universal Plaza to be in place. Let's see, what is my advice to local businesses who are struggling because of COVID? A couple pieces of advice I would have is, first of all, connect with our economic development staff. We want to know what's going on and how we can help as a city. We've provided a lot of assistance in many different ways, some ways that, would probably surprise members of the public, but frankly, if a business needs our help and we can help, we want to do what we can. And I would also suggest that they be reaching out on their social media channels and others for the help they need. I know many people who went and bought gift cards and other things at the beginning of COVID just to try to help. And I think communicating your needs is absolutely something that you should not be ashamed to be doing. We're somewhere in the middle to hopefully, starting to head towards the end of a 1 in 100 year event that, frankly has brought the economy, and particularly certain sectors of our economy, to their knees. And that's really hard to watch happen. And the city has tried to do everything that it can to support businesses. I think we actually have business assistance that's not been requested, that we have allocated. So that's where I would be suggesting that local businesses connect with our economic development staff to try to get them connected to various resources. And we've done everything from getting people connected with Portland General Electric about their electric bills to all kinds of other things. Oh, Becky asks, will I be seeking re-election? And if so, how can I help? Well, Becky, I will be in touch with you, and I guess now is as good a time as any to indicate to the Tigard community that I will in fact be running for re-election in November of 2022. So you asked the question, I'm a straight shooter and an answerer, so there's your answer. I'm running for re-election. What other questions do we have rolling in? And Becky, make sure you contact me directly, not the city, with your contact information, because you can help on my campaign, but the city can't be involved in that. So
Got a couple hearts for that announcement, Mayor.
we got some hearts.
Yes, and I'll remain neutral on that.
Okay.
There's a question about the public safety levy and what it is being used for, and if it is all spent.
Oh, great questions on the public safety levy. Who's asking this question, just so I have context here, Mr. Wyatt?
This is coming from one of our neighborhoods.
Okay, one of our neighborhoods. What's going on with the public safety levy? So great news there, at least from my perspective, is that we've been able to, and Chief McAlpine really has been able to put the resources that were raised in the public safety levy to immediate and good use to do exactly what we said we were going to do. The last I saw, I think we had maybe 8 out of 9 police officers hired and positions filled, and that's an unprecedented number of police officers positions to be filled that quickly. What I will say about that is that some of that happened because of some rearrangement with the TriMet police, which we had participated in. We got paid for that. We weren't spending Tigard money on that, but we did have trained Tigard officers that were participating. And when the TriMet Police Department, or Transit Police, I guess it depends on how and exactly what you want to call them, when that program kind of got reimagined and changed, and I think it's now the responsibility of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, I think, or it will be soon. That allowed us to bring back officers who were being paid for by TriMet. And that allowed Chief McAlpine, when we brought those officers back, to immediately deploy them into patrol and use them in our community. And therefore, we didn't have to spend quite as much money on training them because they were already trained and ready to operate in Tigard. So that's how we've been able to get 8 of the 9 officers filled. I think the last school resource officer position is still needing to be filled. And then the other big commitment that we've been honestly struggling with through COVID was our commitment to putting every officer, every sworn officer through advanced crisis intervention and de-escalation training. This is robust 40 plus hours of training for each officer. And the levy provided for that. Unfortunately, COVID was not, the beginning and middle of COVID was not the time to be, or it just didn't make doing a bunch of in-person training with a lot of people in a room possible. And so, and that's really, that's the kind of training that needs to happen. The chief has tried to supplement and get people what I would call sort of some interim training for them, but the intent in our plan is still to make that happen as we committed to. There's not really a choice about that. We can't spend the money for other purposes anyway, and that's a strong desire of our community. So that's just, I would say, a little bit behind schedule, simply because putting lots of people in classrooms was not an option, and frankly, training just wasn't happening in the way that it normally did with COVID. Even the police academy was shut down for multiple months. So I have an announcement I can make too about kind of a 5-year anniversary celebration for the Lake Oswego Tigard water system, and that is on June 9th. So in less than a week, we will have been obtaining all of our water from our owned Tigard water system. And that is a project that's near and dear to my heart. I spent the first 6 years of my time as a city councilor and city council president working really hard on that project and making sure that it went from, like, there had been no construction done when I was elected, but a lot of planning had been done and a lot of money had been spent on planning. But it took a lot of work, even on, I mean, I gotta be honest, as a city councilor or an elected official, there are not a lot of things that you spend hundreds of hours on. I spent hundreds of hours on the water system. So over about in fact, it could have been more than hundreds. It might have been more than 1,000 hours on that over a 6-year period of time. It was a lot of time. And so it means a lot to me, and I'm proud of what we've done. I know I hear from residents sometimes about their concern about our water rates. I think what they don't understand is what our water rates would be if we were still buying wholesale water from Portland and having to pay for their entirely new water supply system that they're going to have to pay for. Okay, so Mick is adding to, I think, the earlier discussion, saying we need Tigard to start enforcing sidewalk laws to keep pedestrians safely off the streets. How can we get a task force on this? Mick, that's a good question that we can make sure that our transportation, I think that's kind of a question that both our transportation planning and engineering staff and also the police department need to respond to. So we will get that question into them. The staff that are here will make sure that you get a response on that, and take that suggestion of having a task force about it. I think there are also a lot of places in Tigard that just don't have sidewalks at all, and that's a major concern of ours too, and a pretty significant capital challenge. We did an inventory 3 or 4 years ago that of all, like, really the question asked by the city council, and particularly by City Councilor Goodhouse, was how much would it cost to put a sidewalk everywhere there wasn't one and should be one in Tigard? I want to take a little poll here before I release this information, which I've said before. So if you watch my stuff, it's, this isn't going to be a surprise, but I want to see if anyone knows or could guess how much money it would cost to put a sidewalk in every sidewalk gap in the city of Tigard right now. And this was in 2018 construction dollars, because things are more expensive now than they were in 2018. But what's your guess? Put them in the chat. I want to hear a couple of guesses here. People have any idea?
No.
Like, is this $1 million, $10 million, $20 million?
I'll put it in the chat here too.
$1 billion, or something in between? Anybody got any ideas? Becky says $2,500 per gap. Is that what she said?
Yeah, 2,500 per gap.
2,500 per gap.
Yep.
And then we got 13 million. Was that another one I see from Lindsay? Am I reading that right?
I believe so.
13 million. All right, I'll give you just a few more seconds. See if we get any other interesting answers. I'm impressed with my own reading abilities here with my reading glasses. I got transitions this year for the first time, so the fact that I can read Facebook from 5 feet away is impressing myself. I don't usually impress myself, but I can see. The answer is over $100 million. It's about $120 million actually in 2018 dollars to close all the sidewalk gaps in the city of Tigard. And by gap, I'm meaning anywhere there should be a sidewalk and there isn't one. So that's to put that in perspective, that's, probably, if we did nothing else, no other capital projects, which isn't an option, that would probably take us 40 or 50 years without doing any other projects. So that gives you an idea of the scope of our capital projects program. What other questions do we have?
Mayor, we had a question. This is a little lengthy. I'll read it. As someone who is from Colorado, no need to mention the name. Is Tigard conscious of training versus complete lockdown? That as somebody from Colorado, that was eye-opening. The kids in Colorado have to do harsh training that has caused issues for some. What is the goal of the education system training on this without causing PTSD to the kids? Have you heard of any insights from the district?
So so first of all, I think getting more information from both the school district on this question and also from this is a perfect question for the school resource officers. So Carol, can you get this question to the school resource officers to answer? Because there is a lot of both evidence and information, and also they can provide exactly what the school district is training on. I certainly will be the first to admit that listening to my children, my 3 children, describe what they're learning, I honestly never went through that. I saw a recent post, this is kind of a side note, but I saw a recent social media post about people in my generation that we avoided the bomb warning types of responses in schools, which were common in the 50s and 60s, and then we were out of school before there were a lot of school shooting events, and so we didn't do the lockdown drills either. But other than knowing generally what the district's approach is, I'm definitely not an expert on that, and I will make sure that you get information on that if you provide us your contact information and a direct message.
Mayor Steiner, the next question is about Pride Month and why the council decided to issue the proclamation this year.
Well, the council issued the proclamation last year as well, and I think we issued the proclamation both times because all 5 members of the city council felt like it's the right thing to do, and making sure that our city is a welcoming city for all. What other kinds of questions do we have tonight?
Got about 8 minutes.
Come on, Tigard. You've been easy on me tonight. Anything further you want to chat about? I'm here for you.
Nothing coming through.
But if we're not getting anything through, I'll give you about 30 more seconds to throw in any last questions or comments. I don't want to hold your night longer than needs to be. Sorry about the technology trouble at the beginning of the session. Hopefully you can still hear me well with my shouting. I stopped leaning, I guess. I was going to pass out if I kept leaning over the table like that, but hopefully you can continue to hear me. Maybe that's why there's no questions, Kent. They can't hear. All right, Tigard. Final opportunity. Get out to those Tigard restaurants. It's restaurant month. Support your local businesses and local restaurants. We have great places to spend your money and see your community. Any final questions?
Nope.
All right. Good night, Tigard.